Okay, Victor, you're up next. Hello.
Yeah, so we have a five game with a $10 under the gun mandatory straddle.
Five. Where's this played out of?
Rivers Displays,
Rivers
aka Chicago.
Display.
Chicago.
Yep. Got a lot of calls from there. Like I said at the top of the show, one of our former content creators comes out of Chicago. Ping Lu, still in the WSOP main. They cut their teeth, Ping and Key Lee, from Fast Track before DePlanes was around. So was it Horseshoe Hammond? Was that the other alternative or something like that way before?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And how deep are you guys?
So we're about 2.2K effective.
2.2K effective. Okay.
Yep. So the cutoff opens to 35,
Okay.
pretty standard.
Yep.
Uh, so the button and the big blind both flat.
Button and big blind call. Okay.
Yep. So then I'm in the straddle with ace nine of clubs,
Okay.
and I three bet to 200.
So you decide to three bet here to 200. So 2.2K effective, you're pretty deep. Cut off to 35, button and big blind call. You get a lot of dead money out there. The big blind should never really have a big hand. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a decent squeeze spot. I mean, again, like, ace 10 suited plus is a, jam. I mean, it's just like a slam dunk three bet. Like where's your cutoff here? Like, are you doing this with like ace 6 suited, ace 3 suited, ace 7 suited?
Not at a super high frequency, but I think sometimes for sure. This is also a time rate game. It's
Mm-hmm.
like $11 every 30 minutes, which
Yeah.
seems a little high to me. So I think I'm also a bit more incentivized to, squeeze here
In a
just
time
because of
game?
that. Yeah, I mean, right? I mean, even though there's no rake, I mean,
Well, I would actually look at it the opposite way. So if you're playing in a heavily raked game where there's no rake pre-flop, you're incentivized to win some pots pre. In a time game, it doesn't really matter, right?
yeah, I guess I was just kind of thinking like it seems like a little expensive, so it's kind of similar to rake in a sense. But maybe I have that backwards.
Well, it just means that in a time game, like the way that you play hands is irrelevant if the commission is not coming based upon pot size. And again, especially if if there is no commission pre, then you can start to push just winning pots pre because you pay no commission. But in a time game, it makes no difference, right? That's why like you can get away with over limping in time games, whereas in heavily dropped games, which is like flat drop post, like in a 5-5 game in LA, you don't really want to do much over limping, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Graham W says the hand takes less time. LOL. Yes, well, that could be you getting more hands. So you three bet to 200. Okay.
Yep. So the cutoff calls, everyone else folds.
All right. So cutoff calls in between fold, fold.
And I don't have any history with the guy, but he's young. He seems capable. And I think he plays the 5-10 game, which is really a 5-10-20 game. So I think he's, used to playing these stakes.
So 475 ish to the flop, right?
Yep, 475.
Okay.
I've got nine of diamonds, seven of hearts, six of clubs.
Okay. So 90 diamonds, seven of hearts, six of clubs. I don't know if you heard the previous call while on hold, where this is one where you might consider doing a fair amount of checking with a lot of your range because of the connectivity and the propensity for someone to possibly have two pair and probably here represent all the sets. I think the last caller we had like his 9 deuce 3 where it was different. It's interesting how the fact that you have a 9 here, which makes, obviously the possibility of sets of nines and even hands with a lot of equity against you, like 9-8 suited, 10-9, go down just combinations wise, how that affects the way that you would play this hand as a C bet or not versus like if you had kings. Your hand obviously needs some protection. So I would tend to think that you would probably C bet a little bit more here with ace 9 than a hand with like kings or queens. You also have a backdoor flush draw here too. So just, very sort of subtle things when you're looking at this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. During the game, I didn't really consider, checking too much. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
after looking back, I definitely want to check a bit more frequently than I was thinking of at the time.
The other
But
thing too is this guy is closing the action in position, and again, sort of playing a clean pre-flop game. Sometimes if you don't know anybody, doing based off a hand rating if, well, actually the button had called. Oh, excuse me, because I thought both people were out of position. So he's got the button calling behind. So he calls here. And again, I think it's a losing call for the cutoff really to have a hand like 7-6 suited here and be in the middle, 9-7, even like 10-8. Now, again, can they have those hands? Sure, but it's slightly different than if cutoff called and then only the big blind called, because at that point he's got more of a frequency of having those types of hands closing. But here on the button, I would fold those hands out to, especially against a straddle 3-bet where you can just call with a lot of your medium strength hands. So when you come swinging out of there, it's like one of the sort of spots where you are somewhat polar, or you're allowed to be polar, closing the action pre in the way that you construct a 3-betting range. But still in live poker, it's probably still lean towards value here. So another reason why I would fold off a lot of those hands. Kevin B says, I don't think this spot in the cutoff should have any calls. I think it's a 4-bet or fold with players behind. That's what I'm sort of getting at. I mean, I think you can sometimes find some hands that you might not want to 4-bet, but still play, like a hand like 8s, things like that. But okay, so 9-7-6, yep.
Yep. So I this time I see bet 150, so about a third pot.
Okay.
So he just calls.
So hero bets 150, and the cutoff calls. So you go about 1/3. Now the thing that I'm going to say here is that, again, sort of shaping this entire handout, I do remember what ends up happening here, but even if you didn't know, this is a very, very key, I think, important part of this hand is what your flop c-bet sizing is if you face a scary run out. Now, the reason why that is, of course, is because the smaller that you make a flop c-bet here, the more of these types of backdoor Broadway hands, like a hand like Queen Jack suited, are going to get in there, and those hands are going to have to start to bluff scary runouts. So the smaller you bet on the c-bet size, the more hands they're going to have, as opposed to coming out and betting like 2/3 or something like that. So we're at 775-ish, according to my stats here.
Yep. So the turn is a 5 of spades, so it's a full
there you go.
Rainbow board.
So 9-7-6. Turn here is a 5. So now we've got obviously a one-liner here, 2 and 8. And again, you sort of go back to this and you look at this and it's like, well, I mean, obviously I think your play probably is to check. The question is, how much 8x does the guy have? If he's not defending pre with 9-8, 7-8, and he's doing a lot of 4-betting off or folding, like our commenter had said, you might only be left with 8-8 here.
Yep. So, easy check for me. And the cutoff, he bets 400.
So hero checks, and the cutoff bets. So hero checks, cutoff bets 400. So he takes about a half pot sizing here, right?
Right.
And you guys have, I mean, you've only put in, 350. I mean, if you call, you're going to have like 1,500 back, right?
Right, about pot back if I call.
I just don't know how much 8x this guy has. I mean, it starts to look really, really scary. But really, when you come down to it, it's like you can call here, and if you don't get, and you're saying it's a spade, so the backdoor didn't come in, so we don't have to worry about any backdoor flushes. I'm not ready to release this hand yet. If it comes out like a deuce at the end, and then he just goes like crazy large, you're really only talking about 8x here. Now, he could have a set here too, I suppose. But you would think that those hands don't take that type of sizing, thinking about what you might have check calling here. Possibly if you do check call here on the turn.
Yep. So I did call.
All right. So hero calls.
Yep.
And now,
so now we have 1575.
Yeah, 1575 here. So against 9765, hero swung out with a 3-bet from the straddle spot with ace-9. So he has top pair with his one-liner out here. So 1575 here to the end. Okay.
Yep. And the river is an offsuit 5. We can just say the 5 of hearts.
5x. Now, Kevin B said that the turn is a pure fold. I think, again, I don't know how, is the turn a pure fold just because of the fact that there's 8x out there when he doesn't have much ace, 8x out there? I don't know. if somebody would take I mean, the 5 doesn't really interact with anything that's really going to give 2 pair that's called on the flop here. I don't think with the fact that, well, the cutoff had just called. Okay, so he could have a hand like 5-6, maybe, if it was called pre. It's just, again, something else to think about. So it's 9-7-6-5-5. The only thing I would say here is that this definitely allows, obviously, any flop sets to feel much, much more comfortable about betting across rivers, even though they probably should have anyways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here are checks, I assume.
Yep, I check again, and then he jams for about 1,500 back
Wow.
for me. Yep.
So this is one where I really think that your hand equivalency here, right, is the same as any overpair, right, with what this guy's representing.
If not better, I would.
Well, that's what I was
say,
going to get to.
yeah.
It's the question here
Yeah.
is that would you rather have kings here or would you rather have 9x? You
Right,
know,
yeah, definitely 9x.
yeah, or I mean, and maybe like the best one might be like 10-9, you know, something like that. Like, you know, slightly better, right? If you had 10-9, but you still have 9x here.
Right, block
So,
the stacks, block 9-8,
yeah,
and I think the river pair 5 is interesting too. If he did have a hand like 9-7, 7-6, those 2 pairs are counterfeit, and my hand does look like an overpair,
right.
so he wouldn't take those for value anymore.
If he was betting 2-pair on the turn, his hand gets counterfeit, right? If he flopped
Right.
2-pair, which would only really be 7-6 and 9-7. Of course, you have a 9 here too, right? And again, 9-7 is probably pretty wide. But, when we take a look, this is where it can get a little bit confusing, especially for, I would say, kind of somewhat newer players. You get this whole concept of MDF, right? Like minimum difference frequency. What does that mean? It means, because you have pot odds here and then you have minimum defense frequency. I'm just going to look at this as a pot size bet just to make it easy because it's right around pot size bet, right? So pot odds, you're getting 2-1. But because he's risking pot, what that means is that like you have to defend down to right around 50% of the hands that you arrive here with so that he doesn't have a profitable bluff. Now you might be like, well, is ace 9 here in my top 50%? Well, I have jacks, queens, kings, and aces that are better. But in fact here, I'd rather have 9x. So if you went down that line, not having 9x is actually on top of aces here. If so it has to do sometimes in these particular spots about exactly what you have. What is the better call? And any 9x here is going to be a better call, I think, than aces. I might get curious here. I got to be honest with you. It seems I love that you have a 9 here. I really do. And yeah, I mean maybe I fold off some overpairs here more easily. But
yeah, I was thinking in game I would fold jacks and tens a lot, double blocking jack 10, and then I might fold aces, just blocking like random ace high floats.
well,
But for overpairs,
so
I might call kings and queens.
so when you go 150 here and it's heads up, obviously jack 10 is a pure call, right? No matter what the suit is. I mean, I guess that's the difference, right? Versus like queen jack, where he might have, if it's only queen jack suited on rainbow board, he might have one of the suits that's supposed to be tossed off. But I think any suited Broadway that contains a 10 in it or a jack in it, it's probably going to be continued here. So it's an interesting little sort of exercise because, if you have 10s, you're blocking like 10-8, but he's got less of a chance to have all of those backdoor continues against your flop sizing, right? And then to a lesser extent, jacks as well.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I might get curious here.
Yeah.
So what'd you do?
So, yeah, I just called,
Mhm.
and he said I was good, and he mucked. So
Nice call. So what would you have done with aces or kings?
um, I might have puke called.
Puke called, really?
This was more like a side call, but like aces or kings. It might have been more of like
And
a
then what,
puke.
fold off tens and jacks because of the backdoor blocking?
Yeah. In game, I was thinking I would definitely fold jacks or tens.
Interesting. It's an interesting one. Nice call. I'm glad you
Yeah,
thought it. I mean, you're thinking it through correctly.
awesome.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
Yep,
Appreciate the call.
yep. Thanks for having me.
All right.